And I'll make you the host.
Right. And then I'll copy the keys.
Oh, where are you? Okay, you're host.
Got it. Thank you. I'll start my end and we're good to go.
Probably retired.
There you go.
Both of my kids were on history.
Oh, I gotta do the room view.
I'm surprised as to how connected everybody.
There we go.
Yeah, it's a small town. It is a small town. How are you doing, Santa?
Good, thanks. How about you?
Doing well.
We're not muted anymore.
Oh, we're live?
Yes.
Yeah, we're live.
Hi, everybody, we're live.
If that's the case, I'm gonna take a seat.
Oh, man.
If the board meetings last long enough, you get a free concert.
Who's over there?
Seems like
Allison Krauss.
we all ought to get one honorary ticket.
Right?
I'm not sure.
Free concert and all the lightning you can stand.
Very mellow rock, I know, 70s lady. There'll be a lot of RH people going there today. Yes.
It's like I went to see King Prince.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome.
Oh, there we go.
Welcome to our
Hey, Steve.
very first day of June, Wednesday, June 1st. Trustees, we're going to start with a couple of committee meetings. But before we begin our committee meeting, Trustee Cushman, we have a special guest there, I'm told. One of our former trustees, our student trustee, Alice. And I believe Dr. Nye has, or maybe you now have, a resolution recognizing Alice for her previous time and commitment and really wonderful representation on behalf of the students there at the college, and was hoping you might be able to stand in for us and read the resolution and properly recognize her. Trustee Cushman, can you hear me?
My fault.
Oh, we don't have them.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. I can hear you now, yes.
We didn't have the microphone on. Thank you, Chairman Martin. I will, in order to make this official, I will start this committee meeting and then make that presentation. So this is to start the call to order the Education and Planning Committee meeting this June 1st at 4:30 p.m. And I'd like to ask for a motion to amend the agenda to present the resolution of appreciation to Trustee Alice Avila. May I find a motion? Thank you, Santa. And a second?
I'll second it.
Jeff? And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nays?
But Jeff, you're not on this committee. Can you still do that?
Yeah, neither am I.
Yeah.
Technically, but I don't think we
I
have
can amend the agenda.
Joan.
Oh, okay.
Would need to be
Yeah.
Joan or somebody.
All right.
So
we're okay. We're okay. Go right ahead.
yes. So if I may, Allison, read resolution of appreciation to Trustee Alice Avila. Whereas Alice Avila was elected by the student body of the Finger Lakes Community College to serve as a student trustee, and whereas Ms. Avila has competently served Finger Lakes Community College as a student representative on the Board of Trustees for 2 terms from July 18th through June 2020. Whereas Ms. Avila demonstrated conscientiousness in her role as a student trustee, always considering the consequences for students of issues under discussion by the board and offering valuable student insight and perspective. And whereas Ms. Avila's point of view as a non-traditional adult student attending college while raising a family and working provided a much needed perspective for the board. Yeah. And whereas Ms. Avila represented the board as well-informed ambassador through her participation in SUNY and New York Community College trustees, student trustee meetings on behalf of the college. And whereas Ms. Avila's role as student trustee, she represented the entire student body in a professional and thoughtful manner. Now therefore be it resolved that the FLCC Board of Trustees expresses its sincere appreciation to Alice Avila and for her dedicated service to the Finger Lakes Community College and its students. Thank you, Alice.
Nice. Thank you so much.
I know you've served your time, but if you want anything to say at one last, at an official board
In
meeting,
an official capacity. I'd just like to say thank you for being such a wonderful group to work with. It really, even though it was a difficult time in my life, being part of this group really meant a lot to me, and it was like another family. So I appreciate that so much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can stay with us as long as you want.
Let's start a
You know
third
how
year.
painful this can be. So, first order, or our second order of business is to review the May 4th, 2020 minutes. Are there any changes, additions, corrections? Anything at all? Seeing none, we'll accept those. Move right on to an enrollment update from Dr. Abatis.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Happy June. All right, so in your packet is the enrollment date reflecting summer and fall terms as of May 20th. I'm going to provide you an update, a verbal update as of Friday, May 27th, a week later. So for summer 2022, just a reminder that there was a deregistration that occurred on May 20th following distribution of the summer weekly enrollment report. So as of the 27th, matriculated full and part-time headcount is up 15%, which is a decrease of 1% from the May 20th report. FTE is up 20.5%, which is an increase of 1%. Go figure. That's what counts, FTE. Non-matriculated full and part-time headcount is up 26%, which is a decrease of 11% from May 20th. FTE is up 32.7%, which is a decrease of 12.6% from May 20th. Dual enrollment full and part-time headcount is down 36%, which is no change from May 20th. And FTE is down 26.9%, again, no change from May 20th. So overall, summer headcount enrollment is up 19%, which is a decrease of 6% from May 20th. And total FTE is up 25.2%, a decrease of 5.3%. Any questions about summer before I move on to fall?
Move
If
ahead.
not, so fall enrollment as of May 27th, excluding Gemini and non-credit state aidable, is up 12.8%, which is a decrease of 3.5% from May 20th. And FTE is up 15%, which is a decrease of 4.6% from May 20th. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Abatis.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Move on to the student success update from Ms. Whiffen.
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen here. One moment, please. Thanks. So thank you again for letting me come. I believe you can see my screen.
Oh, we can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't. It says it's
There it
shared.
goes. It
Okay.
was a little delayed, like the weather, I guess. I don't know.
I guess so. Yes, we're having nice weather. Thank you so much. Last month, I had the privilege of highlighting some of the tools that we were using to support our students' experience. And as I mentioned then, tonight, I'm going to share how we're starting to dig through this data that we're collecting to help us unlock how we can influence our students' experience and keep them on track to successfully completing their goals. Next. Okay. Before I go too much further, I just wanted to do a quick review of the tools that we have and a timeline that you could see pretty much every week during a student's first term with us. They're going to have some type of touch point, whether we're asking them for information through the chatbot or whether or not we're getting progress surveys that faculty and instructors are providing. We get a lot of information this way, and as you will remember, this was pretty much the first term where all of this kind of came together. And I wanted you to see on a timeline kind of how it all works, if you will. And just because we're getting a lot of data, sorry, clearly I'm having technical difficulties tonight. Clearly, because we're getting a lot of data doesn't mean we know what the data is telling us or we understand. And I wanted to share this particular visual because I think it represents an interesting way to look at data. Do you see a duck or do you see a rabbit? Because both of them are represented. And I think it's really important that you remember just because you get a piece of data doesn't mean that you're looking at it the correct way or it can't be interpreted a different way. And so with that knowledge, we are getting lots of data points that we need to figure out what do they mean and in what way are they influencing the student. And so I'm going to highlight for the remainder of this particular presentation 3 different pieces of data that we've collected and a little bit about what they're showing us. Just a note, the Starfish Progress Survey number 3 identifies a flag called Recommend Course Withdraw. And this flag is designed to allow a student to withdraw from the class before the deadline where they can get a W versus an F. And in almost all circumstances, the students are probably not going to successfully pass the class. 349 students, individual students, got 492 withdraw from the course flags. That should say withdraw from the course flags. I apologize for the typo. From 79 faculty and 168 unique classes. So that's telling us that some students got multiple withdraw flags. We then started to look at that data and look at the other data that we have on these students. Are they veterans? Do they live in the suites? What's their academic status, their financial aid status, their major, are they SUNY Online? Are they EOP? Are they athletes? How many flags were raised? Was it the first flag? And then at the very bottom, you'll see the blue highlight of the chatbot. How many of these students engaged with our chatbot? And what data did that show us? And then finally, the last week, right after graduation, we started looking at enrollment data. Did the student withdraw from the class? This was after classes had ended. Did they do what they were told to do? When did they register for spring, or are they registered? Are they advised? What was the outcome if they didn't withdraw? And with this data, we started to look at, are we seeing trends? Do we see patterns? What's the influence we have over the trajectory of students? And so 2 pieces of data, first generation academic probation. Of those 349 students, 16% are first gen and on academic probation. 2 areas that we know are dangerous areas for students to return. They need to, they need extra support, if you will. 26 of them had chatbot data. They had engaged with different surveys in the chatbot. 29 of them had not. And you can see, really didn't make an influence in whether or not they withdrew from the class as they were told, nor if they withdrew from all of their coursework. Very similar. But now we see that the students who engaged with the chatbot are almost double advised and or registered for fall versus 4 who had not engaged with the chatbot. But I don't know exactly what that means. So now we have to start asking those questions. questions like, well, the theory is that students that engage with our chatbot are more likely to perhaps take positive actions towards being retained. But now we have system questions we can ask. If students aren't acting on the information that they're getting, what can we do to influence that outcome or that adjustment? And we need more data, right? This is just 2 small data pieces. Also, who and how are we reaching out to these students, and what strategies would make the most impact? And I wanted to share this with you because I think it's really important that you see these are the types of questions that we are now really starting to dig into. How can we adjust our processes based on the data? What's the trend data that we're finding? How do we maximize our interventions with timing and systems? And how do we move to a system of data analysis? All of the information I just shared with you was done by pulling various data reports and layering them on top of one another. Very time intensive. And we're not sure what systems we have in place to capture that data and make it more electronic. But working with ACPI, we're definitely moving in that direction. But tonight was really just about sharing how are we digging through this data. And then I hope to share later on in the term, the summer, what we really learned in the term and what we're going to adjust moving ahead in the spring. And with that, I'll take questions.
Sarah, one question. When you say we, who's we?
Well,
Who takes data?
the AVP of Student Affairs and ACPI, we have had the luxury of having some additional help with COVID funding to have some assistance in kind of data mining and layering some of that. And we've asked some other folks to help. So the chatbot data information we pull down, we get reports, but it's right now it's fallen mostly to ACPI and myself to kind of dig through that and come up with some of the questions and the information that we're gathering.
More power to you.
You know, COVID was winding down, so I needed something to do.
That's right. That's right. Keep you off the streets.
That's right.
So, it appears the chatbot is trending the way we would have expected that it's going to make a difference. Are there any actions that have been taken so far because of the data that you've gotten to date?
Yeah, one action that we did is we realized we needed to have more what they call tags on students. So for example, SUNY Online students were using the chatbot. I can't say statistically yet at a higher rate, but we were seeing a lot of usage with the chatbot, but we didn't know they were SUNY Online students. So we were reaching out without that piece of data. And then we realized we needed a way to tag that. So when I quickly go into the chatbot and I see the number of students who might be at high risk during a campaign, I want to know how many of them are SUNY Online so that I can get that information over to the SUNY Online folks, as well as our on-campus folks, because we need to talk to them differently. If they're living in Brooklyn, it's a little different when Jeanette Arup calls up and, you know, they say that they might not pass because they're dealing with a health or wellness issue than a student who lives over in the suites. And so we needed a way to kind of identify the SUNY Online students who aren't physically near us. And so we've learned some of those pieces, but you know, we're starting to dig through some of that data. I can't tell you right now the registration of those individuals who were engaging with the chatbot versus not engaging with the chatbot and their registration or advisement rate, but early indicators look like students who were engaging were more likely to have been advised. So there is some information there, and we built a campaign around advisement. So we did that kind of on the fly. And we're starting to this summer really look at the campaigns we want to build for next year based on the data we got.
Wonderful. Other questions for Ms. Whippen?
I do. There's a lot of data to analyze. Is there any way to prioritize what you focus on?
Maybe. That's something that Deborah and I are talking through and trying to figure out, you know, where is the the biggest bang for the buck right at the beginning. And so the first piece is laying out all of the data points that we have access to. And so we've just started doing that. And then from that, where can we analyze, where can we automate that? So for example, I can pull off multiple usage reports from Starfish. I can pull off from the chatbot different areas that have the students' ID numbers, and I can pull from Timely Care the ID numbers of the students that use it, and then mirror that together and figure out what's happening. We just haven't had this much yet. So the first part is just kind of trying to categorize what is it we even have access to, and then what is it telling us in each of those reports. So that's the summer's project.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from the trustees? Sarah, thank you.
Absolutely.
We'll move on to, Sarah, don't go away. We have you and Cassie on the academic grievance policy, our first read. Or I'm sorry, the immunization. I got that backwards.
That's it. Yeah. So the immunization policy obviously has a lot of adjustments to it based on versus what you looked at last fall and put into place. And everything is in response to the SUNY and the governor's mandate of boosters. We are moving away from fully immunized to the new language that CDC is using related to up to date. And we are trying to make the document more fluid so that we don't have to come back every single time SUNY decides it wants us to apply perhaps another booster or something to that. So it's not exactly a new way of doing things. It's pretty much mirroring what we got to this spring, but it is different from what it looked like in the fall.
Any questions from the pre-read? Also, one thing I noticed in going through the pre-reads is that it was not just the adjustments you were mandated to make. There was a lot of cleaning up of the language. It was made much clearer. So I just want to commend staff for doing that. It was a pleasure to see some of those things fixed. On the academic grievance policy.
So again, the academic grievance policy and the student code of conduct come to academic senate annually and also come to the board annually. There is not a lot of adjustment to either of these. It's again more cleaning up, more streamlining based on what we lessons learned, if you will, and there aren't major adjustments to the actual policies themselves, but the grievance policy does have some adjustment to the board based on timing and outline some more specifics, so it's very clear to students what falls into the academic grievance process, both as informal process as well as a formal process.
Trustees have any questions about the academic grievance policy? And, I think you covered the student code of conduct, same process, so are there any questions on that from the trustees as well? Again, I want to commend staff. The language is, I just saw evidence of it being cleaned up, more concise, and I think it was easy for us to get through, so thank you.
I will relay the message. Thank you.
And next on the agenda is to approve tenure track faculty reappointment for Matthew Hola. Cassie?
Yes, Matt Holla. He is our faculty who teaches psychology and is the coordinator of the psychology program. He's up for his 5th year reappointment. He's off cycle. He was a January hire, so that's why his name is being presented now for reappointment. as of January 1st of 2023. We are happy to have him on board.
Any questions from the trustees on this reappointment? Thank you, Cassie. We'll take this up on the full board meeting. Next is the strategic thought presentation, but our strategic plan update is gonna be, the full package will be presented probably in August. I think everybody's heard that Dr. Orloff had emergency appendectomy, so we're wishing her well. In the meantime, I know folks have pre-read. If there's any questions that they want to present now to present to the staff, please feel free to do so. Hearing none. This may set a record, Dr. Nye, for education.
It's a good way to close out the year.
After a 309-page reading assignment, it's a joy. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got,
Second.
And a second from, thank you, Donna. Now, all in favor of adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No abstention. Pass. Chairman Martin, to you.
Thank you, Trustee Cushman. Appreciate that, and everyone that participated in that committee meeting. Turning our attention to Facilities and Finance Committee, Trustee Don Cass, would you lead us, please?
Thank you, Chairman Martin. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. Ask if there's any additions or corrections to the minutes. Hearing none. Adam, we'll start out with the operating budget update and the finance report.
All right, thank you. Share my screen in a second. One thing I do want to state is for some reason at board meetings, I seem to get sick, so I apologize. Allergies are bothering me. I've been sneezing a lot, so apologize. I have to stop and take care of that. So first thing is the monthly report. It's, as of April 30th of this year, about 67% complete with the fiscal year. The one thing I want to point out before going into any of the details, we look at the budget here, this budget with encumbrance. I'm going to forget the word encumbrance, just look at the budget. You will notice that this 52 million is not what was approved in the Board of Trustees meeting last year. That's the $47 million number. The reason that's there is, these reports are just downloaded out of the system with all of the revenue streams gathered into, a 200 some odd page report. But just to kind of give a little bit of sense of ease that this number is accurate, if we back out, so for the STEP federal aid, there was $1.9 million budgeted. So if we backed out the rest of this, which is about $5.3 million, if we back that out of this 52 million, add in the applied fund balance, that gets you to the 47 million that was approved in last year's Board of Trustees meeting. So while this doesn't look accurate, it is just because of the federal funding that we have received. So this number will be adjusted at the I believe August or September meeting to do a resolution to adjust the budget based on federal aid. So we will do that later on in this fiscal year. So on the revenue side, year-to-date revenue is 44.1 million, about 85% of funds received. Typical fund flow for this time of year. The non-credit is still tracking historically a little bit behind compared to last year, but we do expect that to pick up steam in the next month or so. For the federal aid, we did have an increase in expenses over the past year. This includes the institutional and student aid awards. This past month, we had $1.9 million further expensed to payments to students. On the expense side, scroll down. Year-to-date expenses are tracking well as well. 35 million year-to-date, or about 64% complete. The only line that really stands out is the non-credit line. The expenses are picking up as expected, and then that will, gather steam. And then as we see the rest of the revenues come in as well, it'll balance out. And again, once we'll be going through the fiscal year 22-23 budget. So once that's complete, I will, the next board meeting, have a projection of where we plan to or hope to be at by the end of the year as far as projected expenses to budget, to get a sense of where we may stand in the next fiscal year or at the end of this fiscal year. Moving on to the one without federal funds. Again, same numbers in every other category with the one exception being the federal aid. Backing that out just to kind of show what the budget would look like if we did not have any federal aid. The one line down on the expense side that I pulled out was the supply and expenses. That is covered some payments that we made to students, and the assumption would be that if we didn't have the federal aid, we wouldn't have the ability to make those payments. So I backed that out. Now, the bigger strategic picture, or I guess theorized, so to speak, if we didn't make those stimulus fund payments, what impact would that have had on student retention? Because that did provide some additional financial resources available to students to maybe pay off their student account balance or provide them enough funding to actually re-enroll the following semester. So those are some other non-financial matters to really consider. If we start pulling that out, what would happen to student retention had we not had federal stimulus funds? So those are the monthly reports. Any questions on that?
So Adam, Steve here. I do have a question. You early on in your report talked about adjustments. If I'm not mistaken, our fiscal year ends August 31st.
Yes, correct.
So as a point of order, I believe that we as trustees would need to take on any changes to that budget at our August meeting. We could not wait. You mentioned September, but I don't know if we can go back in September. So we would certainly need, since there is no official scheduled meeting between now and August, we would need to address that in August. I just wanted to make sure we had some clarity there.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the monthly report? Okay, we will jump into fiscal year 22-23 budget overview. So in your packet is the budget presentation to the Board of Trustees. You will notice that there is a draft on this. The draft is in reference to one of the pages that we'll get to in a minute regarding FTE and how that correlates to projected headcount as well, just to make sure that the numbers are in relation to each other. There's not necessarily a direct calculation to get from one to the next, but just want to make sure that they correlate to each other. So the second page there is just table of contents, and we'll get to this first. Go through this first executive summary for you. So the overall, the proposed budget for next year is projected to be increased by 1.04%. It's primarily due to increases in personnel expenses and contractual obligations that have automatic consumer price index increases built into each agreement. By category, so the first one here, contractual salaries and wages. These are expected to increase about 1.9%. And this is primarily due to salary adjustments related to contractual obligations, as well as the addition of 2 new positions in the enrollment management division. The increase is partially offset by staff turnover and overall lower salaries, as well as department reorganizations that yielded some salary savings. And this is part of a bigger picture strategically moving forward as we will continue to see a slight reduction in FTEs over the next several years, impacting resources to be more strategic in our our personnel lines, as that does equate for about 75% of our overall budget. The benefits are expected to slightly decrease, not much, but negative 0.7%. This is a result of offsetting expense projections. There is a large increase in our medical insurance, roughly $440,000, or about 9.3%. This, however, will be offset by a projected decrease in a New York State employee retirement contribution. The reduction to that line is primarily due to the voluntary separation incentive plan that was offered a couple of years ago, as well as other retirements that have occurred in the past couple of years. Now, this is the defined benefit plan. So this is the state retirement plan. And as newer employees come in, they tend to choose the contribution plan, or the 403B plan. So that's why this contribution is going down significantly. On the expense side, expenses are, projected to decrease by about $400,000 to approximately $929,000. There has been, over the past couple of years, significant investment in equipment, especially the information technology area that was covered under stimulus funds. So that is the reason for this decrease from last year or from this current fiscal year to next fiscal year. Just for some perspective, the equipment budget line in prior years, specifically if we go back to 18-19, was around $1 million. So I feel like looking back historically, these lines are getting more in line to where equipment lines had been in the past. And when we look at the contractual and supply expense lines, this is increasing approximately $487,000. Again, these are areas that have increases that are covered by service agreements that we've have to incorporate those increases yearly over into the budget. Some of these things include the lease payments, all of our software license agreements that we have. So another bigger item that increased was our nursing program. They had a $74,000 increase in expenses, but that's due to the expansion of our nursing program. So that's a correlation between expanding academic programs, but there's also a cost associated with that hopefully will be offset by more enrollment in those departments, those academic departments. Going down to the revenue side.
Adam, before you go, just real quick, going back to the IT expenses, the way you just said that. So for instance, that increase for the IT software would include, for instance, the cost for the telemed program, correct?
No, because that was paid for by stimulus funds. So it's kind of an in and out expense right now. Where that will come into play is in the coming years when we have to pay that with college's operational funds. And that's where that multi-year budgeting tool is going to come into play significantly in the next several years. Because a lot of these newer software programs that we've purchased have been paid for by the stimulus funds. So we don't have to, quote unquote, worry about them now. But they will have an impact of the budget 2-3 years down the road when those license agreement renewals come about.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. On the revenue side, revenue for tuition and fees is expected to slightly increase. There's two factors behind this. The first one is the decrease in projected FTEs is going to be offset by a projected increase in tuition, or proposed increase in tuition, by 3%. The other increase is that part of the governor's budget stated that Excelsior tuition rates can increase and be set at 22-23 tuition rates. This is the first increase since fiscal year 16-17. So that was, now while the FTEs for Excelsior students are low, it does provide just enough offset to really kind of balance that tuition budget between this current fiscal year and next fiscal year with the decrease in FTEs. So about a $23,000 increase in overall, which is good considering the proposed decrease in FTEs. From state aid, the recently adopted state budget included base aid funding levels to be equal to the 2021-22 level, so 100% floor of that. So as a result, the state aid was budgeted at the same as it was this current fiscal year at $11.3 million. The federal stimulus revenue has been removed from the 22-23 budget as we hope to fully expense that out. And if we did include it in the budget, it would just be a zero-sum game as we were budget that money and just to expense it on something else. So it's a zero factor in this budget. Rental aid is to remain relatively flat. The estimated reimbursement rate is 41% for next fiscal year. The decrease is offset slightly by lease payments associated with contractual obligations. And then on revenue from chargeback, it's projected to increase about $1.1 million or 14%. Overall, our out-of-county FTEs are expected to reduce slightly, as with overall FTE numbers. However, the projected increase in operating expenses and reduced overall revenue, the chargeback rate is proportionately increased. So it's projected to go from $3,860 to $4,540 next fiscal year. And then this is just a breakout of the funding categories from the revenue and the expense side. You can see the percentage of budget and then the percentage of change from 21-22. Obviously, the biggest operational revenue side, the chargebacks, 14%. Miscellaneous revenue is also going up 21%. And there's a lot of one of the big ones for that is the non-credit income coming in, workforce development funds, and then some other miscellaneous increases as well. The appropriated fund balance usage is increasing almost double, or it is double from what is currently is this year, $927,000. The fund balance expected is $1.8 million for next year. It's about 3.9% of our budget. On the expense side, personnel services and employee benefits accounts for 75% of our budget. You can see the changes from this current fiscal year. Not a huge change in both personnel, which is good considering the contractual obligations we have in that category. You see the equipment went down 30%, and then contractual went up about 4.5%. Any questions on the executive summary before I move on?
Done.
Adam,
Yes.
this is Donna. So my question is, what will that leave in the fund balance?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the current fund balance now, there is a slide later on in the presentation that'll talk more specifically to the fund balance. There's some good and some, I don't want to say real bad, but the good news is our fund balance at the start of this current fiscal year was about $9.6 million. We will have some additions and subtractions to that based on one, federal stimulus funds, but also some matters related to our audit. My prediction is at the end of this current fiscal year, the fund balance will be around $10.6 to $10.8 million. So if we back out that 1.8 million, we're looking at a fund balance of roughly $9 million, give or take, which again, I think is fairly healthy. It's about 18 to 19% of our overall budget. And I think if you look at other institutions and what they suggest as a healthy fund balance against your budget, falls anywhere between 12 to 15% of your budget. So I think we're still very healthy in the fund balance area. And we do want to attribute that to federal stimulus funds. We were able to capture some lost revenue on that side. So that did help kind of support our fund balance moving forward.
Thank you.
So I had a question or a couple questions. since we're on the fund balance. The 1.8, almost 1.9, headed towards 1.9 million that is referenced there. How are we mitigating that number to, to have that number come down, if you will, between now and the end of August?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the easier ways to really kind of put this in a numbers perspective, this is a projected budget, so to speak. So when we look at, and I'll take the personnel services and employee benefits line as kind of my example. These are budgeted at levels that we are currently staffed at. And if you think of a perfect world, we would have no staff turnover, no retirements, no vacant positions. But we do. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. We currently have vacant positions that we have a budgeted salary for, but we are not spending. So if we take those two lines, you're looking at, $36 million. Historically, we have expensed about 95.5% of those lines because of those reasons, because of retirements, resignations, vacant positions. So if you're looking at $36 million, historically, there's probably it's safe to project that we would save about $1.6 million just from those lines based on that staff turnover. So if we look at 1.6 million, we're looking at appropriate fund balance of 1.8856, almost 1.9. That leaves a fund balance usage of $200,000. Again, historically, we don't necessarily spend all of the contractual obligations as well for various reasons. Those reasons can change year over year. But if we look at just that personnel line, there's really a good valid reason to believe that over the course of that year, about $1.6 million is going to be budgeted but not expensed due to that reason. So that's one of the bigger areas that we can, kind of mitigate that 1.8 million moving into the next fiscal year. Does that kind of help answer that question?
It helps, yep. And I think even between now and our August meeting, I think it would be continue to be helpful if we got some of those updates from time to time, even if we're not meaningful as a board of trustees, so that we can continue to keep our eye on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is going to play out from a leadership standpoint, strategically looking forward as well, when we talk about expensing funds in the next fiscal year and then moving on the out years as well. And what I can also provide at the next board meeting possibly is just kind of a higher level look, and maybe working with Michelle as well. How many vacant positions do we currently have now, and what does that average look like on a month-to-month basis, just to give the board a sense of what positions we have budgeted but we currently really aren't expensing on.
Okay. My next question actually does involve Michelle or yourself, and that's with regard to the 22-23 budget year. And I know we've successfully ratified a couple agreements with the two bargaining units, and there's some savings there when it comes to our healthcare plan and so forth. Where are those dollars realized in terms of line item? Is it in the benefits line or is it elsewhere?
That is in the benefits line. There is a larger breakout of all of those employee benefits, line by line, whether it's retirement, healthcare. They're all broken out individually, so we can track those individually.
Adam, if I could just add a little detail to respond to Trustee Martin, that it's not a savings that you'll see in the budget, it's a cost avoidance. So had we stayed in the consortium, that line of the budget would have increased more than what it actually is going to from this fiscal year to the next.
Yes, better said. Thank you. I appreciate you correcting me on that. That's a important distinction. Thank you for that. I understand. Thank you. And then my final one back to you, Adam, is the chargeback. looking at your numbers of what, 3860 suggested next year going to 4540, that represents about a 17% increase that we would be charging other counties other than Ontario for students that come from those counties. Don't need it now, but I think the trustees might benefit from understanding historically what those percentage increases have been, and or even real dollars. Those are some challenging conversations to have with some of our neighboring counties from time to time, knowing that in fact that increase is that substantial. So I realize it's a formula, I understand all of that, but to at least be armed with that information, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There is a slide later in this presentation that kind of shows a 5-year trend of chargebacks.
Okay.
So you'll kind of see that a little bit more.
Okay, great. That's all I had. Thanks.
Yep. Next slide here, key revenue assumptions. And so there's some numbers in here, 2021 actual enrollment, 21-22 budgeted, 3634. 21-22 revised projections of 35.52, decrease of 2.3% from the original projection. And then 22-23 budget assumptions, 3,533 FTEs, or a decrease of negative 0.5% of the revised enrollment projections of 35.52. It's a 19 FTE decrease. Not a huge number, but a little perspective on how this number is devised. There are primarily three numbers that, three groups of students that make this up. One is our traditional credit-bearing degree-seeking students. The second group is Gemini students, and the third group are adult basic education students, the ones that are taking high school equivalent and those sort of courses. That final group are state aidable, non-credit bearing students. That's what makes up that number. Now, the first two categories, the traditional students and the Gemini students, those projected FTE decreases from this current fiscal year are a little bit greater in numbers and represent anywhere from about 4 to 4.5%. When you look at the credits that are being decreased over those projections. What is making up some of that difference is that state aidable non-credit numbers for our assumptions here. And that's why that there is a balancing out of this projected FTE decrease of negative 0.5. I just wanted to provide a little more clarity into what makes that number up and why we're only seeing a negative 0.5 decrease when we've been talking not just months, but years that our FTEs are decreasing. The numbers are decreasing a little bit more percentage-wise greater in those traditional student categories, but we have been making that up in our non-credit state aidable numbers. Tuition rates. Increasing 3% or proposed to increase 3% from 49.68 to 51.20. Translation from a part-time credit of 207 to 213. State aid per FTEs remaining flat at 29.97. And our sponsor contribution for the next fiscal year is also remaining flat at $3.7 million.
Adam, this is Santa. I have a question. Can you scroll back up to the enrollment?
Yep.
For 21-22, aren't we in a position where we can put actuals there?
No, not yet. We're not complete with 21-22 yet, because summer does account for those numbers as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we typically don't have, and I'm not the best one to answer this question, but final approved, quote unquote, SUNY numbers don't come out until the fall. As we submit all of our reports up to SUNY, they have to approve them and then they get redistributed back out.
Okay, thank you.
So we can put in our own actual numbers, but they won't be SUNY approved numbers.
So Chairman Cass, if I might.
Trustee Martin?
This is not necessarily directed to FLCC, but the frustration and really a concern here that we are still not seeing an increase in the original formula for community colleges here continues to put the heavy weight on students as opposed to sponsor or the state. It's extremely frustrating, and to see the lack of balance, if you will. So I very much want my comments as a part of the record, and continue to advocate, if you will, a balancing of that. And frankly, Adam, I'd love for our next meeting to understand what that percentage breakout is when it comes to the burden of students versus the other two entities, because the third model certainly does not exist. We know that, and it's one that we just tend to gloss over. All of a sudden we're on to the next fiscal year, and the burden continues with the student. It's just extremely frustrating. And for those of us that have been at it for a long time, we just continue to see that escalate. So there it is. Thanks for letting me get on my soapbox. Appreciate it.
Trustee Martin, just to kind of follow up on that, there is another slide that kind of breaks that out. So we will be able to see what that burden is to students, and under the traditional model of 33, 33, 33, what that now looks like. And it's not clear that. So
before we move on, Trustee Martin, something important for Donna and then whoever's going to follow in your shoes. We need to really start thinking and working with NYCCT in August, not October or November, for what our position we need to really start working our legislators. And I've been thinking about it after looking at part of this budget, and I realized that we all high-five sort of that we got a floor, but the floor doesn't account for the last 2 years or year and a half of inflation and what's occurring and what's going on. And so I think we have to look at it even differently next year, and how we really want to get that to the right people in the future. And quite frankly, when we high-fived, we got a floor. They gave us the floor last year. If they'd given us the floor, and we did very well in the first year of COVID, if they had given us a 1920 instead of 2021, we would have, or 21-22, if it had been, Adam, what is it, 2021? Yeah, 2021, if they'd given us that, it was a difference of $660,000 just for us. And we had one of the best enrollments in the state. So I just want to highlight, we as a board are going to have to think more clearly how we want to start energizing. Thanks. Sorry, Adam.
Okay. What I want to point out in some of these slides here, it references 1920. I wasn't able to update some of these slides as the SUNY annual report for 2021 has not been distributed yet. So I do not have updated information on some of these categories. So this slide is the same one that was in the budget presentation last year. We just wanted to keep the consistency of the budget book the same. And once we get updated data from SUNY, I can certainly send out this information so that we have updated information in our packets. But this shows a 10-year trend in FTE enrollment. FLCC, if I can zoom out a little bit just to kind of show where we stand overall in that trend. In the bottom third, so to speak, I guess. And we expect that the updated numbers to kind of reflect the same. This is just in a chart. If we look at this last one here, if we see, so 35, 33, these are the total FTEs that are projected for the budget. If we break that down into those, the categories I earlier mentioned, the first one here, the red bar, 3316, this is the traditional and Gemini students, and then the 217 number here represents those non-credit state aidable. And you can see there was a pretty significant increase, 128 to 217 FTE for next fiscal year. The next slide here, share of net operating support. So this kind of alludes to what Trustee Martin was talking about earlier. And this is the revenue generated from either students, state, or local. The one thing I do want to point out on this is the local is a little bit misleading because it does include 3 categories. So that green line there represents a sponsor contribution, the chargeback rate, as well as the fund balance usage as part of the local contribution. And these numbers are broken out in a later slide, but this kind of alludes to that original community college model of sharing it equally 1/3 across the board between students, state, and local. And you can see here students contributing the most towards their education at 42%. And that's what we need to hopefully work on, getting that blue line down, the state line up, and kind of moving that green line from a local sponsor share more in the direction of the equal sharing. So visually, we can see that burden is on the students. We need to work on that. Next slide here. Again, this tuition for 2021. I do not have the updated numbers yet for 21-22. However, I did do a little research and I'll zoom out so we kind of see where we are in comparison. Apologize if that's too small. If it is, just let me know. We are down in the bottom third as far as tuition for throughout all the community colleges. And again, this is 2021. So we 21-22 for us, our tuition is set at $49.68. Of all the community colleges for 21-22, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 community colleges increased tuition for 21-22. So if we were to kind of redistribute based on that, we would come in right here just under Columbia Green for this current fiscal year. So we did move up a couple lines in this fiscal year with tuition, but again, we're still in the lower third, so to speak, of tuition for community colleges.
And this is Jeff. For those colleges that have kept the tuition at or below what we have had, do we know if any of those counties have been increasing their sponsors' contribution over the same period of time? Or are theirs flat too?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know the direct answer to that, but what I can say is that from what I have found in just doing some research, the counties that have not increased their tuition, or I want to say counties, the community colleges that have not increased their tuition, in relation to the sponsor contribution, there are 2 things. 1, their sponsor is increasing their contribution, or 2, their sponsor's contribution is a greater percent of their overall budget. That does tend to be a theme, and that's one thing I'm going to try and provide a better report on analytically, especially when I get the 2021 annual report from SUNY, because it does provide all that data.
Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Trustee Assels, go ahead. Someone had a question first.
Yeah, Barb Hamlin. Are these comparisons apples to apples? Because I know Monroe has a lot of other charges, like parking, et cetera, that really make them much more expensive.
Right. And this is strictly a tuition comparison.
So we could play with that.
Yeah, yes, we could, on standard fees, there's a few of them we could look at. For instance, I know that both are, for MCC, both of our student fee and our IT fees are much lower than MCC's. Yep. And then Trustee Assels, to answer your question, that part of that came from a discussion with my fellow Western New York College presidents this morning. And for Trustee Assels, MCC had a $500,000 increase to their sponsorship contribution last year. They're asking for an additional $500,000 this year, and the county and the legislature are considering providing even more for this year. As one data point of the 30 colleges, or 29.
If I may, Carol Urbatus, what percentage of our students are aid eligible, Pell otherwise? In other words, in poverty?
Approximately 60% receive Pell, and that may be a little low.
So approximately 60% of the county's students are in poverty level and the rates are going up.
So I guess I have one as well, maybe for our provost Gassie or for the President Nye here. What prohibits a student that might be doing a complete virtual opportunity and getting their coursework going straight to the bottom, to Dutchess as an example, and doing their virtual at that particular tuition rate versus Nassau? Could they not apply to wherever?
That's a good question. You're right, they could. I'd like to think that, number one, our degrees that we offer online are attractive, the service that we provide for them. But you're absolutely correct. They could go to another county or another community college and go to school there.
And of course, the quality of our teaching, the quality of our staff and so forth contributes into that as well.
Yes.
So, but if someone's looking at straight dollars,
Right.
there's certainly quite a disparity there.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions before I go back to Adam? Okay, Adam.
Next chart here, again, it's old data 1920, same as last year's packet. I will be updating this once I get 2021. This is chargeback rates. And I think this is a really good one to kind of focus on when we talk about increasing our chargebacks to, $4,540. We are still fairly low on that list in comparison to other community colleges and what they charge other counties. And I don't expect this ranking, so to speak, or the descending order here to change much. I kind of disregard FIT. That's not your typical community college. But if you look at some of these other chargeback rates, they're a lot higher than what we are doing. It doesn't make what we are proposing, necessarily right or justifiable. We have our own reasons for doing that, but just in comparison across all SUNY community colleges, some of these rates are pretty high. So it's an interesting one to do. And as we look at what the chargeback rate is for us, there is a level of analysis that I would like to do to really kind of see what that impact is for our students and how we compare to other community colleges when it comes to chargeback rates.
Can I just say, to the benefit of Adam, that we saved the other counties money this past year where we used her funds to save the additional increases that we could have done. So that should be brought into the equation as well.
Yes, good point. This is just a kind of a pie chart of operating revenue sources and the breakout. So it shows, tuition and fees, just over 40% of our budget, state aid 25%, sponsor contribution 7.7%. That's a really important one when we talk about that traditional community college model. Chargebacks make up about 19% of the budget, and then various other offsetting revenues, 3.0%, and then about 3.9% for the fund balance. This is the chart that when I started doing, it was a little confusing. So what you have to do is kind of split it into two. So if we look at this line, 25% line here, everything above that line is one aspect of it. And then these three lines here are the local share broken out. So again, it's a little bit more detailed than one showed originally. 42% is the student share. The state is about 26%, with the local which includes chargebacks, fund balance, and sponsor contribution 32%. The 3 lines below here are that local share broken out. So the chargebacks here in the orange represents about 20% of our budget. Local share, 8%, and then fund balance about 4%. So here's that local line and kind of how the percentage of our budget compared to the past 4 fiscal years. I want to say relatively flat. This current fiscal year, it dipped down to about 17.5%, but it has hovered around the 20% range for the past 4 fiscal years. So even though the rate is considerably different, the impact to the overall budget from a percentage standpoint is fairly consistent.
So Adam, I just make sure I understand what you've presented to us here. Of the 32%, what you characterize as local share, the roughly 20%, 19.9% are dollars that flow back to us for students who reside in other counties other than Ontario.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, 4% fund balance I get. So which means our sponsor county contributes 8%.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just an observation, since we were talking, Chairman Martin was talking earlier about the fact that we seem to always put the burden on tuition. But if I'm looking at that chart, if this, forget the formula for the moment. If the state simply matched what the local share was, we could control the tuition increases better than we are.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the state, quite frankly, could do that college by college. So they, if I'm looking at that chart right, our local share in 22-23 is 32% and the state's is 26%. If they simply increase that 6%, to get it up to 32, we could make the difference on the tuition and still be financially even.
And Trustee Assos, I see it slightly differently. I think we're fortunate percent of our revenue comes from outside of the county because students happen to live elsewhere and they view FLCC as a destination and our recruiting efforts, if you will. If we didn't have that, the reliance would even be heavier on the student. So I see that just with a different lens.
There are a lot of talking points for advocacy, but this is, and Rob, I'm sure you can back this up based on your conversations with the other presidents. The numbers may change slightly, but the lines are about the same for most of the community colleges across the state.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the only thing I want to add is that getting us to 0 is not what we should be aiming at, because we have greater need for counseling and support services for the students that we're receiving as the demographics change and as we get into more robust pathways type programs, which will have a return on state and local investment for sure.
Okay. Next slide here. So this is sponsor contribution as a percent of budget. And I don't have the annual SUNY report, so I don't have 2021 data yet. So this is the same as last year, but a very telling picture of where our sponsor contribution stands as a percentage of budget compared to the other community colleges. Ranked 28 out of 30 as far as level of support. So this is the area we need to work on and hopefully, build that relationship and get a greater sponsor contribution moving forward.
Yeah, a parallel chart to this, and I would assume that maybe the SUNY could provide the data, is to see what the sponsor's contribution is as a percentage of the sponsor's budget, as well as ours, because that 3.7 million on the Ontario County budget is a drop in the bucket. I don't know, Rich, I'm guessing the county budget's 200 some odd $million.
220.
So, the sponsor's contribution as a percentage of $220 million is like point something.
1.7%.
Okay.
But that's a great point.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting then to see how the rankings change.
Yep.
Where they flip-flop.
Yeah. And that data, whether it's available at SUNY or not, should be readily, it'll take some time to research because all they have to do is go onto county websites and see what their budget is and then tie that back to what they're contributing. So it's something that can easily be done.
Well, even if you've got the 1920 data here, we certainly know what the county budgets were in 1920. They're already done and finished. So even that comparison, Trustee Aslos brings up a brilliant idea.
Yep. No, that's something I can work on and I'll provide that data at a future date. It's a great point. Okay, next one. I briefly talked about this already, fund balance. One thing I want to point out in this 5.8 million, I believe as I'm going through this whole, worksheet, I believe this number is not correct. I think what this is supposed to represent, this was the estimated fund balance close at the beginning of the fiscal year last year. Was put in the sheets. Going through this data, I realized that number is something that I probably have to update because that number should represent the fund balance at August 31st of the previous year. So what this means is this is the fund balance going into 2021. I'm sorry, the fund balance going into 21-22, which would be that $9.6 million that I referenced earlier as our fund balance for the beginning of the fiscal year. So that the chart, I believe, would change slightly. This would be, a little bit higher. So that change from this current fiscal year to next fiscal or to 22-23 is not as significant. But that doesn't change the data here at the end. And this is, how I got to that 10.6 million. We look at the 9.6, we have lost revenue captured from federal stimulus funds, some other reimbursable expenses based on federal stimulus funds, which brings that 9.6 at the beginning of the fiscal year up to roughly anywhere, 12 million or so. We still have to capture that and draw that down from the federal government, the G5 account. But then we have some potential impacts to the fund balance based on our audit, which we are still working on. So worst case scenario, we would take what is projected to be a $1.3 million hit to the fund balance. Again, worst case, we don't see that panning out as where we currently stand. But that would put our projected fund balance at the beginning of next fiscal year at about $10.6 million. In the budget, it's estimated at $1.8 million, which we alluded to earlier. So that leaves our fund balance going into next fiscal year at $8.7 million, which again is fairly healthy considering the overall budget. But something that we don't want to see as a sustainable budgeting model moving forward in utilizing the fund balance. And again, that all ties back to those funding streams and how do we improve those as well. Any more questions on fund balance?
I do. This is Santa Abraham. Should we ever have a surplus, would the surplus go into the fund balance?
Yes, it does. It ties into the fund balance, correct?
Yeah, okay.
That's optimistic thinking.
I said, should it ever
Should
happen?
But-
Not when it happens.
But essentially, when Adam was talking about the fact that we spend 95, 96% of our budget,
Mhm.
and that 3-4%
Yeah,
gets
would go
snuck-
in there.
gets snuck back in the fund balance.
So, and just to, for numbers sake, so to speak, so this 8.7 projected fund balance, if we were to use the 1.8, that still represents about 18% of the projected budget for next fiscal year, which again is fairly healthy considering, in my viewpoint, anywhere from 12 to 15 being a healthy fund balance moving forward. And what, you know, a lot of people are going to ask, well, what are you using those funds for? And that's where the strategic discussions, you know, start with the Board of Trustees and the president, and allocating funding for, you know, specific projects, new programs. But to just sit here and say, well, we have a reserve of, you know, $8.7 million, it's not a rainy day fund. We don't want to look at it as that. It's just, you know, there in case strategic initiatives that we have in future years. Excuse me. So next slide here, this is the expenses broken out. So again, personnel services and employee benefits, roughly 74-75% of the budget. Contractual obligations, 25%, and equipment, roughly 2% of the budget. This is operating costs per FTE compared to SUNY. Again, this is old data from 1920. We'll update it as soon as I get the next report, but this just states that our operating cost per FTE is below the SUNY average by about $700-800 per FTE. So that's that looks good for us. We are operating a little bit more lean than other community colleges while still maintaining quality education and base operations. And then this is just an overall look of those numbers. Operating again, 1920 average 12.6 for operating costs per FTE. About the, you know, roughly the middle, a little bit lower than the middle there for operating costs. When you compare it to the rest of the community colleges. FIT is not included in this. They're kind of pulled out below, but you know, that would really skew the numbers if they were. And then the following pages here are just the 2023 proposed budget broken out by department and what areas fall underneath those numbers. The rest is just sort of informational. This one here is kind of where we look at, again, just very high level projections, 23, 24, 24, 25. Really, it's a kind of a 2.5% increase over current projected year operations, mainly due to contractual obligations, again, personnel costs, and FTE projections moving out in the out years. But what we really want to look at here is, you know, what that appropriated fund balance may look like moving in the out years. And this is where that multi-year budgeting model that I'm going to start developing over the summer and incorporate into next year's budget development really comes into play, because now we can be more strategic in mitigating the use of fund balance in the out years and have a plan set in place so we're not going into the next fiscal year budget build mode, you know, kind of with a shock factor in, holy cow, we're already projecting, you know, $2.6 million in the future years in fund balance usage. So the multi-year budget model is going to come in really handy to help us be more strategic in that. And we're going to start looking at those out years a little bit more closely so that we can be better prepared in the future years when it comes to developing our budgets. And then just some org chart, and then the timeline that we have had established earlier in the fiscal year for the budget development cycle. That concludes the budget presentation. Any other additional questions?
I think you move on, Adam. Student services fee.
Yes, so in your packet is projected student services fee. Would you like me to pull that up as well? I think I still have. A second. Actually, yes, it is. Yeah, just give me a second to share again. So these are the student service fees projected for the next fiscal year. There were a few changes, and I'll run through those really quick. The first one here is culinary arts. It went from 150, 256 to 150 to 280. So this 280 number is what changed on there. The main reason behind that is the cost of supplies for those courses, mainly food expenses for the teaching of all the courses has increased dramatically, as we all know, with the current state of the economy. The next line that increased was this nursing assessment, testing, and remediation fee. The old fee was $300. It is now $365 per course. The second or the third item, let's see, nursing lab fees. This line here, nursing lab, it went from $62 per course to $124 a course. That fee doubled. Again, the cost of supplies for these courses has increased dramatically over the years. And this is to kind of compensate for that. This line here, the nursing FIT testing fee, or nursing fit testing. I'm not sure if it's the correct acronym, or what the acronym stands for. This is a new fee. In years past, this was covered by hospitals. They are no longer covering that fee. So this is a proposed new fee of $30 one time for a testing fee for nursing students. And then the last one here is technology fee. To propose to go from 16 per credit hour to 18 per credit hour, up to a maximum of 12 credits per student. We did talk about this briefly, MCC specifically, that some of the other fees are also a lot higher, so the cost of education there is more expensive. For comparison for technology fee, we are still below some of our other area community colleges. For instance, MCC, they charge $27 per credit hour. Cayuga charges $20 per credit hour. Tompkins Cortland charges $23 per credit hour, and Erie also charges $20 per credit hour. So even with the increase from 16 to 18, we are still charging less than some of our other community colleges in the area.
Okay, any questions on the fee schedule? Okay, Adam, the sponsor services.
Yep, sponsor services. So these are standard sponsor services that we have with the county. Workers' comp, 140, county attorney, 25,000, and purchasing services, 70,000, for a total of $235,000.
Questions? Okay, and the tuition schedule.
Tuition schedule. Again, these were reviewed briefly in the budget. These are broken down by per semester. So $25.60 per semester, or $51.20 for the year. This also does relate to Excelsior recipients now, so this did increase from last year. $213 part-time, $71 for high school concurrent enrollment. That's up from $69. And then no certificate of residency, $48.30. 403 for the part-time, and then 134 for the per credit hour there. And then out-of-state tuition per semester, 3,068 or 256 per credit hour.
Any questions? Okay, Adam, you have 3 informational items.
Yep. So the first one is bid acceptance for letterhead and envelope printing. Lowest response bidder was Dupley Envelopes and Graphics out of East Syracuse. Annual cost of $12,100. This is a bid acceptance. So this is the first year of a 5-year total agreement. We can renew for 4 additional years after this current fiscal year is up. The second one here is, let's scroll down, a bid renewal. This is for, excuse me, boiler maintenance and repairs for our facility here. First of 2 one-year options, and this is for a total of about $7,900 for maintenance, but plus for the cost of repairs in the future years. And then the final one is the operating transfer report. Again, this is just an operational in nature, no impact to our operating costs, net zero impact.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Anybody else have questions? If not, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Rich will move that.
Second is Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Chairman Martin.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Cass. We appreciate that. It's top of the hour, 6 o'clock. Let's roll right into our annual meeting. Let's get through that business, and then we'll take a break before our full trustee meeting. I'd like to call to order the annual meeting of the Board of Trustees of Finger Lakes Community College. We have a number of items in business in front of us here. I'd like to take these separately. Some folks may abstain on some of these resolutions that are in front of us, or have votes or comments. Motion to approve the 2022-2023 FLCC Board of Trustees meeting calendar. And we are looking at the meeting calendar that was given to us most recently. Is that correct, Penny?
Yes,
Great.
that is correct.
And this was provided to us sometime this afternoon. So hopefully each trustee's had a chance to see that. What are the changes as opposed to maybe what was in our original packet?
It was just the one line that was above, under A and ERM, the one line that said that they meet quarterly before at the board meeting night, but they don't meet that way.
Great, okay. All right, so we get this on the table. Please, a motion and a second for approval of the meeting calendar forthcoming year. Please, a motion.
Steve, this is Joan. I move we approve.
I'll second.
The calendar.
Thank you, Joan.
That one I second.
Thank you, Barb. Any comments or questions with regard to the calendar? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions carried. Appointing us the trustees for the upcoming 22-23 year. You have the slate straight there in front of you. Trustee Geis as our chair, Trustee Cass as our vice chair, and Trustee Rich as our board secretary. Rich Russell. Any questions or comments? Before we get to questions or comments, please, a motion and a second to get that on the floor.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Jeff. And a second, please.
Second.
Great. Donna, comments or questions? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Carried. Thank you. Appointing the Assistant Secretary to the FLCC Board of Trustees for the 22-23 year. I'd be happy to move that as Penny Hamilton for the year. Please, a second.
This is Joan, second.
Thank you, Joan. Questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Official newspapers for the upcoming year 22-23 that are designated by FLCC. Please, a motion and a second for those that are listed in front of us. Please, a motion.
This is Don, I'll move.
Thanks, Don. And a second, please.
I'll second George.
Thank you, George. Comments or questions with regard to our local papers? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions carried. Resolution to designate the 22-23 FLCC official depositories. And you can see the financial institutions listed there. I will abstain for the obvious reason that I'm employed by one of those listed. But please a motion and a second. Please a motion for approval.
Rich will move it.
Thanks, Rich, and a second.
I'll second.
Thank
Donna.
you. That was Donna. Questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, 1. Yes, I abstain. Resolution to approve reimbursement of necessary expenses incurred by members of the FLCC Board of Trustees for the forthcoming year. Please, a motion and a second. Let's get this on the table. A motion, please.
Santa.
Thanks, Don, and a second by Santa. Thank you very much. I don't have the total amount in front of me, but seems to be pretty flat from year to year and does cover some of the minor expenses that we do incur when we do some of our professional development. Any questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Penny, what else have we missed for our annual meeting that we need to talk about or cover during this portion?
That covers everything.
Steve, I think you could become an auctioneer.
No, thank you. I got a little mumble jumble on a few of those, but thanks for your patience. I appreciate it. Please, a motion and a second to adjourn this portion of our annual meeting. Please, a motion.
This is Joan. I so move.
Thank you, Joan, and a second, please.
I'll second, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
6:05. Let's take a 25-minute break. I know that's a little longer, but we do anticipate 6:45. And our last agenda here is when we think we'll start, but we'll begin at 6:30. Let's take a 25-minute break and plan to adjourn at 6:30. Thank you all. Well, welcome back, everyone. And, we take it for granted, but thank you, Rick and the IT team for helping us navigate through each and all of these meetings. And we greatly appreciate the advanced work that you do, as well as the work you do during the meetings to keep us all alive and connected. So I know you're a name and a face on the screen there, but it's a team effort. And Rick, Penny, and others, thanks very much. I know it's a full group of people, and we really do appreciate it. And we don't say thanks quite enough. So we appreciate the work you do.
Hey, Trustee Martin, just make sure we got Cheryl over here too. You can't see her in the scene, but she's sitting here making sure that everything's over here too.
Thank you,
About
Cheryl.
ready to leave. I'm going to the concert.
Oh, good. Enjoy what? Kraus, right? Cheryl Kraus. Ooh la la. Looks like the thunderstorms passed. We're going to call to order the Wednesday, June 1st, 2022 meeting of the Board of Trustees of Finger Lakes Community College. And welcome to everyone. This is our public and community comment portion of the meeting, and we, the Board of Trustees, value the input from the members of our college community. We encourage your participation, and we welcome the opportunity to hear from you at these public sessions. We ask that if you do speak, please identify yourself, and we're happy to provide up to 5 minutes for any comments that you might have. Anyone all that's either there in the Carpenter boardroom or anyone online or via WebEx that would like to join us right now and or speak, please, this is your opportunity. Anyone at all? Going once, online, WebEx, twice, okay. We'll continue on with the meeting, and some awful lot of fun here, some appreciations and resolutions of appreciations for two folks that mean an awful lot to Finger Lakes Community College. So with the board's permission and those listening in, if you might indulge me, the resolution of appreciation to John Taylor, our Chief Information Officer. I'd like to read this, John. And whereas John Taylor has served Finger Lakes Community College as a leader for information technology systems. John Taylor began his career with FLCC as a technical specialist, followed by a leadership role as manager, administrative, LAN's desktop and user support position. John Taylor has served in the role of Chief Information Officer since 2014. And whereas John Taylor, in the capacity of Chief Information Officer and through his leadership with the IT, has greatly improved technology advancements to better serve the college and community. And whereas John Taylor, in his role as Chief Information Officer, has always been exceptionally supportive of the faculty, staff, and students in providing technology solutions to meet the needs of everyone involved. And whereas John Taylor, as Chief Information Officer, has provided ongoing support for new initiatives in the areas of advanced technology initiatives related to Lucian, Banner, and any programs that work well within SUNY systems to streamline processes. And whereas John Taylor, as CIO, has led the IT team through a pandemic of unprecedented magnitude, flexing and adapting to the rapid changes and challenging conditions related to technological demands related to the needs of faculty, students, and staff with a most positive attitude. And whereas John Taylor has been significantly involved in keeping the Board of Trustees aware of any technology advances and needs required by the college to operate efficiently and effectively. And whereas John Taylor has been instrumental in negotiating contracts in the best fiscal interest for Finger Lakes Community College, now therefore be it resolved that the Finger Lakes Community College Board of Trustees expresses their sincere and deep appreciation to John Taylor for his dedicated service to Finger Lakes Community College, approved today June 1st, 2022 by the Board of Trustees. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. That's if I might, Chairman Martin.
Please do. Yes, the floor is yours, and there's no time limit.
All right. You don't know what you're saying.
Oh, yes, I do. Please enlighten us.
But I just want to express my heartfelt appreciation for this resolution and for the recognition, and to say that I can't think of a better place or a better way to have had a career for the better part of my working life. When you think of it, we're improving student lives in ways that are incredibly significant. And what a joy it's been to work in partnership with everyone, to leverage technology to do that. So thank you all. It's indeed been an honor and a privilege to work alongside of all of you while we continue to invent a better future together for our students and for ourselves. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. And we know today is not your last day. You're still going to be with us for a little while. Lucky us. But please don't be a stranger. We look forward to reconnecting with you in the time you have here on campus, as well as future dates and as we look forward. So thanks again, and remain well, and Godspeed.
Thank you very much.
We'd like to move on to our student trustee, Sophie Partial, and read the resolution of appreciation for Sophie. Whereas Sophie Partial was elected by the student body of Finger Lakes Community College to serve as student trustee. And whereas Sophie Partial has competently served FLCC as the student representative on the Board of Trustees from October 2021 through June of 2022. And whereas Sophie Partial demonstrated conscientiousness in her role as student trustee, always considering the consequences for students related to issues under discussion by the Board of Trustees, and offering valuable student insight and perspective. And whereas Sophie Partial represented the Board of Trustees as a well-informed ambassador through her participation at the SUNY and NYCCT student trustee meetings on behalf of the college. And whereas in her role as student trustee, Sophie Partial represented the entire student body in a most professional and thoughtful manner. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Finger Lakes Board of Trustees expresses its sincere appreciation to Sophie Partial for her dedicated service to Finger Lakes Community College and the students attending Finger Lakes Community College. Approved today, June 1st, 2022, by the Board of Trustees. Congratulations, Sophie. I think you're joining us remotely, virtually, Sophie. So again, the same floor is yours, and we'd love to hear from you, please.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been really fun and like a big pleasure to be part of this and get to know all of you. It's been a really good experience. I've learned so much and I've met so many fun people, and I'm just really grateful to you guys for being welcoming to me and teaching me about this. And hopefully I'll still see you guys in the future because I'll still be around. So.
Well, that's terrific. And Trustee Cushman, I think I'm going to preempt you a little bit here and give you the opportunity with some other news that I understand is in your report with regard to Trustee Partial.
Well, yes. Thank you, Chairman Martin. I'm going to go right down to it because if it's here, I don't think it is. I've got the old one. The Student Corp will be led by Sophie this coming year. And this past year has just been an incredible experience with that Student Corp. It's been really well run. But with what we've seen of Sophie and her, she always comes prepared. She shows leadership. She's not afraid to speak up. I am really encouraged about next year's student corporation. So, Sophie, we're right behind you. We can't wait to. You're not rid of us yet. So.
Yes. And your smile says it all, Sophie. That's terrific, and we're so grateful for the time we've had. And as Trustee Cushman said, we look forward to more of your involvement on the college campus. And so, lucky us. That's just terrific.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you, Trustee Cushman. We appreciate those words. We have some consent agenda items here, and they include the Board of Trustees Committee and Board meeting minutes of May 4th, as well as the consent items that we spoke about in committee with regard to the tenure tracks, operating budget, fees, schedules, as well as our resolutions of appreciation. So please, if we could take those as a block, I'd look for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please, a motion.
I'll move, George.
Thank you, George. A second, please.
It's Jeff, I'll move it.
Thank you, Jeff. Comments or questions from the trustees with regard to what we have in front of us? Secretary Penny, anything that we're missing? Anything that needs to be added or amended?
Not that I'm aware of.
Terrific. Hearing or seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you. Old business. I'll not want to steal the thunder of Dr. Nye or others, but just say, wow, when it came to graduation. Fine job by all, and I'll leave it at that because I'm sure Dr. Nye and others have some greater detail to share. So any other old business to come in front of the trustees that you might offer? How about new business from trustees with regard to what might be ahead of us? That's it from old and new business. Chair's report, I just gave it in terms of graduation. I'm going to move right to President Nye and the President's report. So Dr. Nye, please.
Well, thank you, Trustee Martin, and you did so rapidly about commencement. Thank you for that. That was a team effort by a lot of people. I thanked everybody I could in my update, or just thank you after the commencement, so I won't talk a lot either, but I was remiss in leaving out a number of IT people that were there as well. Bill Peeler and a number of other folks. Jeff, John, help me out. Jeff Kidd, and Babcock, thank you, and a number of others. So it was really wonderful, and I thank all the board for your support for those. It makes a difference for folks. I do want to let you know that we are down to the finalists for the CIO search. There's 3. We had the 1 interview last week, 2 interviews coming up tomorrow and the next day, and then we'll go from there. The SUNY Blackboard, the D2L Brightspace, John Taylor's folks and the faculty and Cassie Kent are doing a lot of exceptional work working on that, and that we already started part of it with the first start of summer school, correct, John and Cassie? So it's got its ups and downs. I was talking to a couple of John's folks today, and classes appear and then disappear and so forth, but they're working through it. So thank you to all that are working on that. You do know we have our STEM Center STEAM camps going on, not STEM Center, Campus Center STEAM camps going on. And last, Carol, you talked about it. There was one minor challenge up in Newark, but the rest of them are going well, and what needs to be accomplished, so that's really good. That's about it for things that are on here. I did want to highlight a few things. We are going to try, at least Trustee Martin and Geis, to go to a full-up face-to-face meeting at Stage 14 for the August meeting. And we actually have to revise what we need to do, and we need to work on a resolution to allow us to continue hybrid activities for the board meetings. But you can't do it the way we've been doing it now in the future based on the state law that was passed as part of the budget. You can be hybrid, but you have to be hybrid for specific extenuating circumstances to be able to do that. So we'll be working on that, but the goal is to go back to full-time and then have it available, but that'll take a resolution to do that for folks. So the leadership would like us to continue to be able to have folks be able to plug in like this, so you don't actually have to come in if you wanted to listen to the meeting and so forth. So that'll go on, and I just want to let you know that one area that is ramping up, thanks to Lewis and his team, is grants. And Lewis is going to give you an update where they're at and how donations and things have gone on in August, since they're just closing out their year. But we put in for a cannabis grant that I think that, and so do Lewis and others, that we have a good chance of potentially getting up to $1 million from SUNY for a grant. If we don't, we're pretty confident of getting 500K, correct, Louis?
Yes, that is correct, but I'm cautiously optimistic for the million.
And he's usually not cautiously optimistic, so
It's a safe way to say it. We don't have the money yet.
But the other one that's encouraging, that's been a total team effort with board members, Louis and his team, and others, is we put in to try to get federal funding through the new earmarks that Congress has brought into place, and Senator Schumer asked for earmarks. So we put in for a nice sized greenhouse and worked through. Senator Schumer did all the right things, and his folks sent an update today. It looks like that our horticultural complex, what's the horticulture and environmental complex, is that right?
Horticultural education complex.
Education, not environmental. Horticultural educational complex at 3.5 million, which means if you get the matching funds, we're number 3 on his list of recommendations that were submitted to the Congress. So that's pretty cool. So we're still working on some more folks to get some more support for that, but that's pretty cool. If you think about it, where we've come and where we're going, and trying to be entrepreneurial, that's a great thing. And I want to thank the staff for the great work that's done on that. That's my report. Oh, can I just say, Steve, you're on mute, but just want to say thank you to everyone that's on the screen and anybody that's listening for a really exceptional year. It has been a challenge in terms of coming out of COVID. And I did want to say one last thing. I forgot my notes. I had the opportunity to speak or actually listen mostly to the faculty at a Faculty Alliance meeting. And even though I'd heard about it, you get around and everything, the student disengagement and their mental health issues and expectations are very challenging. And the faculty made it very clear it's been a difficult year where the students are not as engaged. They don't have the same expectations of meeting requirements because we all had to be flexible in the middle of COVID. And talking with 2 superintendents and another group of people from another school during the Finger Lakes Works with Their Hands last week, bullying is a huge issue. And that's an indicator of the anger and angst that's still out there in the high schools, but it still comes here in various ways and what we're doing. And so I just wanted to relay that because the faculty made it clear in a way that I didn't understand as well as I did, and I was appreciative of listening to them to get that idea of the challenges that we have going into next year. And then to say thank you for all the people that did work on Finger Lakes with Their Hands. We had between 400 and 500 students here, potential students, all in one day in our area, looking at different types of careers that are out there. And it was a great event that we went above and beyond based on Carol Urbatis' work, along with Margaret Lorenzetti and all the volunteers that were out there to work on that event. It was a great event. So thank you.
The pictures were great. The pictures really, told a story about what that day was all about.
It was a good day. I invite people to come next time too. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I do have one last advertisement. Sorry. June 23rd. And darn it, if we'd known, we would have had county people at the commencements. But June 23rd in the evening, 6 o'clock, is the high school equivalency graduation. And even if we can't get county, I talked to Chris to get to get a couple of his people to come see that event. So at least we start to get some people connected.
And I'll be announcing that at our board meeting tomorrow night, just to reinforce.
Okay.
I promise I'm done now, Trustee Martin.
Okay, well, no reason to apologize. Questions of Dr. Nye? Penny, just before I forget, if you could maybe give us an email with the details of June 23rd on the high school equivalency, that would be terrific. And also, just for the trustees' benefit, all of us, Adam's slides on next year's budget. I didn't quite catch those in my packet. If they were there, please repoint those to me. But if you could have those slides sent around to all of us as trustees, that would be very helpful. Okay, we're going to move right to our committee and liaison reports, and let's start with our student trustees. So please, your final report as trustee.
So I don't really have a lot to report this month. Semester ended and it went really well, and I was at graduation, and that also went really, really well. It was super exciting to see like all the people I know graduate too. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to report, but it was a good month.
Well, again, in our thanks, you were also instrumental in encouraging others to consider and ultimately run for the position that follows you. And we look forward to your colleague who will be joining us at our next meeting and retreats and so forth. So thanks for the work that you did behind the scenes to make that happen. And we know that you did. So we're grateful for that as well. So thanks again for that report. Questions of Trustee Partial?
What are you doing over the summer, Sophie?
So I'm actually in Maine right now working in a lumberjack show. Which is
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, so I'm here right now. They're all practicing, but I'm in my meeting.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
You could be anywhere in the world and we wouldn't know, but you're in lovely Maine. Oh, isn't that terrific? Well,
It's gorgeous here.
well, enjoy your time there. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Great state. Great state.
Amazing.
Oh, wonderful. Trustee Essels, ERM and Audit Committee, please.
Yes, we had a progress meeting with Bonadil regarding the audit yesterday. It was an extensive conversation, and we'll be talking about the content of that a little bit later on.
Great. Okay. Any questions of Trustee Essels? Trustee Mihalik and Abraham, Board Development, please.
Yes, I do have a report. We are going to push full steam ahead with this committee. This summer, we do want to meet after the 4th of July. We want to send an email out to meet a couple of times, because what we would like to do is present to the board a couple of policies at a time, where we would create the policies, edit the policies, whatnot, and then email the policies out to the board of trustees for a first read, if you will, and then maybe even vote on them via email or whatnot. But our intent is to meet over the summer a couple of times to create and review some policies.
Terrific. Questions of our two trustees, Mihalik or Abraham? Thank you. Questions? Sounds exciting. It sounds like a lot of work. We appreciate that. The association, Trustee Cass.
Yeah, nothing other than my written report.
Okay. Any questions from that report, fellow trustees? Maybe you could just clear. Go ahead, please. Yes, whoever's asking the question, please go ahead.
I was very pleased to see that our child care center was full. My next concern is, if it's full, is it profitable, and do we have room to grow it at any point? Or are there plans for growth in the child care?
It's probably 2 no's.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I don't think there's any room to grow it. Right, Carol?
No, the capacity in terms of size is full. But there are opportunities that the board of directors needs to explore in terms of new models for after school care and summer programming for youth. And there's also a possibility we could look at potential renovation of the pavilion that is adjacent to the child care center and the suites that could also provide capacity for a program. But there's more work to be done, and Don is correct. It is not profitable. We're lucky if it breaks even on an annual basis, and other units of the association have over the years bailed them out. So we have to do something. Can't continue in that vein.
Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Other comments or questions? Thank you, Donna, for that. Moving on to the foundation. Trustee Geis.
Well, you all know the golf tournament is coming up. And Lewis, I don't know, did it sell out or how do we stand on that?
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick updates on golf and some other stuff, if that's okay. So in terms of money in, we're as of this evening, just about steady from this point last year, almost virtually the same. We have 98 golfers registered for this year. Last year we had 104, but the only difference really is two sponsors are not spending golfers. So if sending golfers, so if they did, we'd be at 106 opposed to 104. So we're about steady from last year. The golf ball drop will be held. I'm going to give you a bunch of dates here. September 21st, 2 p.m. on campus. And we've decided to sell tickets for that at the golf tournament. So last year we did it together. This year we're separating them a little bit to be more effective. The other thing I want to talk about quickly is thank everyone for their help and support during the annual day of giving. It was wildly successful. We did 198 donors in 24 hours. Without our match, just almost $16,000, 15.8. And to give you some percentages, that's 108% increase in dollars as opposed to last year, and 90% increase in donors. It's just one of the things I talk about all the time, inch by inch, methodical, very calculated way of growing things slowly every year. We do more. So that was really exciting. And thank all of you for everything you did. And just one more date. I thought if you thought you'd have July off for a board meeting, I'd like to invite you all to the foundation annual board meeting. And that's going to be July 28th. And we'll have further communication for you on that. That's 4:30 p.m. at the Viticulture Center. And that's a foundation board request that be held at the Viticulture Center. There's many foundation board members that have never seen the Viticulture Center. So that's their request. That's going to be followed at 5:30 by our first ever alumni wine tasting at the Viticulture Center. So we're excited about that to engage the foundation board with our external constituents, but there'll be more communication on that to come. So yes, there's one board meeting. You want? Thanks. That's all I got.
Thank you, Lewis. Questions of Trustee Geis or Lewis? Appreciate that report, and I know you and Penny and others will get all those dates to us, so that's terrific. NYCCT, Trustee Mihalik.
Thank you, Trustee Martin. I did manage to put something in writing for my annual report. Just wanted to let everyone know that we are going back in September to Saratoga Springs for the annual conference in person, hoping that all things will continue moving along smoothly in that matter. I would like to point out to you the Government Relations and Advocacy Committee. I was very heartened to hear all of the passion around advocacy from this board. We have a proposal at NYCCT from a firm, I believe they may be based out of Long Island. It's a small firm, and the head of the firm is tailoring the proposal to meet very specifically the needs of NYCCT and trustees across the state, as opposed to just having somebody sign on, as a lobbyist and they just do whatever the heck they do. So it's a much more tailored effort. We think that that's a good use of the membership dues that all of the colleges are paying into. And as we move forward with this, hopefully this particular individual will work out. I was pleased with the information that I had heard so far. We have another executive committee meeting tomorrow morning, so I may have more information for you shortly. But one of the things I might propose is that once we hire what we're calling an advocate, not necessarily labeling them as a lobbyist, that has obvious implications, but that our advocate would perhaps have Zoom input from our trustees to bring up all of the wonderful talking points, especially some of them that you guys made today, of information about the sponsors that can be put into talking points, who you think we need to advocate with, in addition to some of the very obvious things, very obvious individuals. So I would like you to just keep your eyes open. Those of you who have lots of connections and input regarding advocacy, I very much would like your participation, even if it's just show up at a meeting at some point, because I think we're going to push this initiative pretty hard. We were successful with the last initiative of getting a community college representative on the chancellor search. What we discovered was, at least the answer that was given to us when we protested and said, you need a community college representative on the search committee, was they just forgot about us.
Goodness, wow.
And
That's
that,
even worse than
that is unfortunately, that is a very typical SUNY trustee response, because they don't have trustees at their colleges. They have advisors. They don't do what we do, and it is very, very difficult for them to understand our role. And I think they may be some of the people that we need to advocate with, in addition to everybody else. So, Rob has it on his calendar to pull up the list of recommendations of individuals or organizations from last year for an NYCCT award. So if anybody has any other thoughts, or if there's an innovative program that you, Rob, or the cabinet or trustees that you've seen that you would like to submit for the innovation award that's new this year, please let us know. The deadline is coming up, I think, mid-June, in the next 2 weeks. So that's it. Thank you.
Questions of Trustee Mihalik? John, I just want to reemphasize again the thanks that on behalf of all of us that you not only do for each of us, but you do statewide and advocating on behalf of the community colleges and your past and your current roles and your even future roles. So we're fortunate to have you, and you're very kind to spend that extra time and above and beyond to make us all better. So really do appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's some extra effort, that's for sure. Student Corp, Trustee Cushman, thanks for your written report. Any highlights from that you'd like to mention?
Really, I think I summed it up. Just, it's been a very energetic group. They've accomplished a lot. The level never went down through the year. It didn't peter out at the end. And you'll see at the end of the report that there was a plaque that everybody got. And I don't know if everybody can see this but everybody got, because kind of to follow on what Dr. and I was saying about the coming back out of COVID and the challenges and the mental health issues and so forth. They really hit that from the front lines. They were in the trenches. They advocated for that, and all that they went through to help support their fellow students was really exemplary. And I'm really pleased that Jenny and company got them those plaques, and they're beautiful and a nice way to recognize that extra effort that they put in. So, thank you.
Thank you for your service to that committee as well. Questions of Trustee Cushman? Okay, that completes our committee reports. Any final announcements, Dr. Nye or Penny?
Penny, got anything?
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't have anything at this time.
I'll follow
Hearing
Penny's
none
lead.
then. Okay, we have 2 executive sessions, and please indulge me here. Session 1 and session 2. Yes, I'm sorry.
I just want to thank you for your service over the past few years.
Oh, I still have a few more minutes. Well, thank you. That's kind of you.
That is an executive session
talk, so I wanted to public.
Well, thank you. You're kind to say that, but as all of you and each of you know, it's never one person, it's all of us together. So I'm happy to be a part of the group and the gang. So thanks very much. We do have 2 executive sessions, and we will return to public session after we've concluded our business there. Executive session 1, to discuss matters regarding collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, New York Public Officers Law, Article 7, Section 105, letter E as in Edward. Our session number 2, to discuss matters regarding the employment history of a particular person or matters leading to the employment of a particular person pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, New York Public Officers Law, Article 7, Section 105, letter F as in Frank. Please, a motion and a second to enter executive session, please.
So moved. This is Donna.
Thanks, Donna. A second, please.
Second, Santa.
Thank you, Santa. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll leave the public meeting open. We'll see everyone on the flip side. Thank you.
Looks like our limo's arrived outside. Cool.
Yep.
It is beautiful.
Okay, they even wrote it
Take us
down.
all to the couch.
Okay, so,
Who's that?
uh,
Joan, are you having difficulty? Sim?
He's kind of walking a tightrope, and you could kind of tell. And, I mean, the letter says.
I'm here audio only again. Someone else maybe could have eyes. Donna, maybe let me know when we have at least a quorum.
Don?
Hi, Don. Yeah, we got Don and Barb.
You've got a quorum.
We have a quorum, great.
Yeah.
Any other business to bring in front of the Board of Trustees here on Wednesday, June 1st? Hearing none, please a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
I'll second it. Rich?
Rich seconded it, Jeff made it? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you all. All in favor, please.
Aye. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a pleasant evening. Stay well.
Thank you. Bye.